So why did you decide to become a Republican?
That's like you mentioned briefly. It's the shift in ideals of the current Democrat Party at the national level, the socialist agenda. And this is something that I had been considering for several months. It probably started back when the pandemic started. And the mandates coming down by the Democratic governors, and of which we have one here in Pennsylvania, that I feel are unconstitutional. And as the sheriff, it is my duty as a constitutional sheriff to protect and serve, uphold, and defend the Constitution of the United States and these unconstitutional mandates being brought down on our citizens and being able to protect their rights and freedoms under the Constitution.
All right, guys, so chances are over the last few days ago, you've probably seen some headlines from the mainstream liberal media like this, okay? Headlines that are suggesting that maybe, just maybe, the Democrats won't get blown out in the midterms that is supposed to take place in a couple of months. Now, here's the thing. I've been saying that the Democrats are going to get blown out in the midterms. And when I say that, what I really mean is that they're probably almost certainly going to lose the House. The Senate has always been up for grabs. There's always been a question of if the Senate is going to flip. And the reasonings for why the mainstream liberal media is saying that the Democrats are making a comeback is because they're saying that, well, Biden has had some legislative wins lately, right? Despite the fact that inflation and gas prices are still at historic highs, okay? We still have an open border. We still have a crime problem. We're still an embarrassment on the world stage. Biden's still not operating in reality. What the mainstream liberal media is saying, none of that matters because, you know, the Republicans have weak candidates, right, on their side. I mean, Mitch McConnell is also saying that as well, too, referring to people like Dr. Oz and Herschel Walker and J.D. Vance in Ohio. They're saying that, well, maybe, just maybe, the Democrats have a chance to retain the Senate. However, what they're missing here, the real context of what they're missing here is, one, that the Republicans don't actually really need to win the Senate, right? It's not like the Republicans have a actual real legislative agenda at the national level, at least, because all they really need to do is to stop Joe Biden from enacting his agenda. That's it, right? That's all the Republicans really want to do at the national level. The strength of the Republican Party, the real meat and bones of the Republican Party is at the state level. Okay, and in those elections probably matter a lot more than what's actually happening in the midterm. So whether or not the Democrats actually get blown out in the midterms, for them, it's a loss unless they sweep the Republicans, right? Unless they take full control of the Senate, right? We're talking about, you know, gaining maybe 4 seats, okay, and maintaining control of the House. It's going to be a loss for them in regards to Biden's agenda because Republicans will be able to basically keep Biden from enacting the most extreme elements, right, of the Democrat agenda, which is all the Republicans really want to do at a national level. So the bigger picture is being missed here in regards to what is actually happening on the ground level, okay, and the political shift that is happening in this country. As just last year, more than 1 million voters switched to the GOP from the Democrats, right? They switched to the GOP. Well, why is that? Well, one is because you have Republican activists like Scott Presler, who is actively out here on the ground getting voters to switch from Democrat or register as Republicans, okay? He's done an excellent job with literally flipping states red, registering more GOP voters than ever, okay? The Republican grassroots activism at the state level is very, very, very strong. Very, very, very strong. Evidenced by the fact that this is happening in key swing states, right? Like Nevada and Florida, right? Again, this is happening all across the country. No thanks to the National Republican Party, but actually thanks to the people who are on the ground, okay? Because, again, these state elections matter. And these state elections really, really, really matter, okay, for a lot of people who experience probably the worst of the Democrat policies, which were the authoritarian pandemic lockdowns that even people like Joe Rogan have come out here and told his audience, his supporters, to vote Republican, because we must not forget what the Democrats were willing to do under their quote unquote semi-fascism to steal from our current puppet in chief, Joe Biden.
No one who is alive today had ever experienced a true pandemic. And I'm hoping that people are going to, recognize that some serious errors were made and not repeat those. That's the best you can get out of it.
So what do you tell those people?
Vote Republican. That's what a lot of them are going to do anyway.
Yeah?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, more than 1 million people transferred over to the Republican Party, I think in 2021 alone. Find out what that number is. But, you look at guys like Ron DeSantis, who kept Florida open and had some pretty reasonable policies in terms of, like, what to do about COVID. And, he mapped it out on television. He was, widely criticized for this, where he was saying, like, we need to protect our elders. We need to, make sure that medical care is available for those people. And everyone else, you should be able to do whatever you want to do. Protect your freedom.
Yeah, so Joe Rogan is right. We must never let the Democrats forget that they are the cause of the problems we're currently experiencing today when it comes to the lockdowns. I mean, they'll even tell you that themselves. They'll say, well, inflation's not Biden's fault, it's the lockdown's fault. Well, who encouraged the lockdowns? Well, the Democrats encouraged the lockdowns, right? So they'll tell you themselves that they are responsible for the inflation and the problems that we're currently seeing with supply chain and stuff like that. But our puppet in chief has the gall, right? The coordinates to come out here and tell people that the Republicans, MAGA Republicans, are the party of semi-fascism.
I don't respect these MAGA Republicans. The MAGA Republicans don't just threaten our personal rights and economic security. They're a threat to our very democracy. They refuse to accept the will of the people. MAGA Republicans don't have a clue about the power of women. Trump and the extreme MAGA Republicans have made their choice to go backwards, full of anger, violence, hate, and division. But we've chosen a different path. Forward.
Yeah, but see, the only problem is that everything that Joe Biden just described as semi-fascism by MAGA Republicans is exactly what the Democrats did during the COVID lockdowns.
They would shame people for even leaving their house in April, May 2020, and you can't do it. And some people wanted to bury loved ones. They wanted to do this. And the argument people were making is, well, wait a minute, I can look at the risk of COVID, and it's something that I'm willing to accept because these things mean more to me, to be able to bury a loved one or to be able to do things with my family. And the public health establishment, oh, no, you can't make that kind of cost-benefit analysis. Then, when the George Floyd riots were happening, they actually wrote a letter with thousands of these people signing it saying, we do not believe that rioting and protesting is bad for COVID, that you can do it. Go ahead. Because we think it's so important that you have to do it. And then they said, but this doesn't mean we support all protests. If you're protesting lockdown policies or other things, then you can't do that. And that's when I knew these people are a bunch of frauds. I mean, how ridiculous.
Yeah, and that, my friends, is why state elections matter, okay? That is why state-level elections are just as important as national elections. And the reason why is because a lot of these lockdowns did come to the states, okay? And the states elected representatives, the governors, and them using their executive authority to shut down their states. And we cannot let these Democrat governors, okay, these Democratic state leaders forget their role in the lockdowns, despite the fact that some of them, like New York dictator Hochul, coming out here and basically admitting that some of these lockdown policies, like remote learning, that the Democrats pushed on kids across America was wrong.
And the decisions were made to have all the kids go home and learn remotely. Wow. What a mistake that was.
And speaking of kids and the pandemic policies related to kids, we can't forget about the TV doctors that pushed lockdowns and vaccine/mask mandates specifically on children. Like CNN's COVID Doomsday doctor Miss Leanna Nguyen.
Federal mask mandate.
Yeah, at this point, there absolutely should be that mandate. There is a real danger when we politicize science. That public trust is broken when we are politicizing science instead of following scientific process. I mean, I have an almost 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. I cannot wait until they're eligible to receive the vaccine. I think until then, mask wearing for kids, especially if we are living in high transmission areas, is still going to be important. And what we really need to do at this point is to make vaccination the easy choice. It needs to be hard for people to remain unvaccinated. I mean, we wouldn't imagine bringing together 20, 30 unvaccinated adults, putting them in a single room together the entire day and have them not wear masks. Why would we say that that's okay for our children? Travel and having the right to travel interstate, it's not a constitutional right as far as I know to board a plane. And so saying that if you want to stay unvaccinated, that's your choice. But if you want to travel, you better go get that vaccine. I agree that masks are a very powerful layer of protection, but it's one layer. And if we have so many other layers that are present, masking may be one that could go away. But we are nowhere near that yet. And I think what we really need to do is get the vaccines authorized for children as soon as that's possible.
Now, here we are, right? CNN's Doomsday COVID doctor is now coming out here reversing course after demanding, saying that kids should be wearing masks in school. Okay, demanding kids wear masks. She's now saying, well, here's why my kids won't wear masks in school. I'm not going to put masks on my kids. Well, why is that? Well, she's saying because her kids, right, had some language development issues when it came to masking, okay? Said that masking potentially impeded her son's language development. So I want you guys to understand, when it comes to my kids, right, and their development, I'm not going to send my kid to school with a mask on. But when Republicans and conservative parents were concerned about the exact same things, they were like, yo, I'm afraid of how this may impact my child's cognitive development. They called you a bigot. They said that you were a super spreader, that you were sending your kid to school to spread the virus, that you didn't care about the lives of teachers and other kids. But this doctor here, okay, who advocated for mandatory vaccinations for kids and adults, she's now out here saying, well, hey, I'm not sending my kids to school with a mask on, and she gets a pass, right? We're supposed to just forget about that. We're supposed to forget about all the policies that she advocated for, along with the rest of the medical community, along with the rest of the Democrat Party. They're supposed to just get a pass, right? They're supposed to get a pass. Oh, oops, my bad. It was a mistake. Even though the science was never really on their side when it came to this stuff, but the narrative and the propaganda was, right? Again, they're supposed to walk away unscathed. They're not supposed to face the consequences for their actions, which is, from a political standpoint, Democrats be elected out for people like her to never be allowed on TV again. She's supposed to lose all credibility. She's not a credible person, considering the things that she said. She advocated for. People lost their lives. They lost their livelihoods. They were smeared. They were erased from the internet. People couldn't see their loved ones in hospitals. They couldn't bury their loved ones. Couldn't bury the dead. Couldn't have funerals. But again, these same people allowed protests in the street, riots in the street in the name of social justice. They allowed Democrat elite politicians and socialites, Hollywood, to run around maskless. Had nothing to say about that. And when it comes to their own kids and their own families, they weren't following any other restrictions they imposed on other people. And you think they're supposed to just be able to get away with it? Democrats are supposed to just keep their jobs? No. They should be voted out for it, because that policy in and of itself has hurt this country on so many levels. Not just when it comes to the economy and inflation and the supply chain crisis, but also when it comes to families. People were torn apart over these protests. People lost their livelihoods, their incomes, their jobs over this stuff. And you think Democrats are supposed to just walk away unscathed? I think not. Don't have a short-term memory. Make sure that the Democrats face the consequences for what they did to this country when you go and vote in the midterms. They can't get away with this. They can't get away with it. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.